Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and a big hint at the Diablo 4 Season 6 theme leaked. Kinda. But we're still left to puzzle over the specifics. The PTR for patch 2.0 is well underway, lots of feedback being collected, lots of great changes. Some stuff I'm not too crazy about. Outside of that though, Blizzard may actually be working on a Diablo FPS. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Also, Concord, the game that was doomed to fail, has failed so spectacularly that it must have broken some kind of record. I can't even believe it. We'll talk about all that and more in today's news wrap-up video, but we'll start with a healthy dose of Diablo 4. Now, if you're still not up to speed on the massive patch 2.0 changes, I've got my videos on my website, Rhykker.com, which covers everything you need to know, and that brings us to a word from this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I built my website using Squarespace, and I was able to do everything myself quickly and easily and with zero education in the field, all thanks to how easy Squarespace is to work with. Squarespace even has a new AI tool called Squarespace Blueprint to make setting up a website easier than ever, uniquely tailored to your brand or business and optimized for viewing on every device. It even has optimized SEO tools so that you can launch your website and start getting views as quickly as possible. Squarespace is flexible for any kind of website. With tons of design options to pick from, you can easily connect all your social accounts and also upload your video content and organize your video library. You can sell products or services and offer flexible payment options, including buy now and pay later plans with Afterpay and ClearPay. Basically, if you want to build a website, I recommend Squarespace. So head to squarespace.com/Rhykker or click the link in the description to start your free trial and use code Rhykker to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/RHYKKER and use code Rhykker. So kicking off the Diablo 4 news. Obviously the biggest news is the launch of the PTR, the test server, for the big 2.0 patch. PTR began on Wednesday, but the files were uploaded to the server for us to pre-download as of last Friday, and a lot of data mining went on in the meantime. One thing that was discovered by Wowhead, some new signs of the cow level coming. Yes, all indications are that there will be a cow level in Diablo 4. We've known about that since the launch of the game. But the last time we got any meaningful progress in the hunt for the cow level was, I think, Season 2, maybe early Season 3. Since then, the trail has gone cold. Seems the community had done everything that they could do up to that point, and we've just been waiting for Blizzard to give us more pieces of the puzzle to work with. Well, those puzzle pieces seem to be coming in Season 6. WoW had found a number of interesting items. The rusted Bardiche, very similar to Diablo 3's bovine Bardiche. The rusted old bell, whose lore says it has a letter W crudely carved onto one side. This is clearly Wirt's bell from Diablo 3. Then there's the jabbering gemstone, clearly a reference to Diablo 3's gibbering gemstone, jibber jabber. And then there is the crooked staff, which is likely to be a reference to Diablo 3's staff of herding. You know, the typical shepherd's staff, which you use to herd sheep, that has the crook in it. In D3, you needed the Staff of Herding, Wirt's Bell, and the Gibbering Gemstone to access Whimsyshire. You use those items to open the portal. Whimsyshire was the secret pony level, because that's what D3 launched with. And years later, when they added a secret cow level, you used the bovine Bardiche to access that. Now there's a fifth item that was also data mined by Wowhead, the unusual key. We can only guess at the purpose of this key, and I'm probably reaching here, but it looks like the part of the key that you hold onto, I don't know what that's supposed to be called, I'm not a keysmith, but whatever it's called, it looks like it's shaped like a C. C as in cow, perhaps? Then the PTR gave us the smallest glimpse of what Season 6 has in store. And while Blizzard did not reveal the season theme officially or even make it available for play, this image can be found on the PTR login screen, and I feel like this wasn't intended for us to see. Season of Hatred seems to be the official season name, and it reads, "Encounter creatures twisted by the ichor of Mephisto's hatred." So we might see something similar to the malignant creatures of Season 1, where it's existing monsters that are somehow corrupted. Slay Realm Walkers to access Hell Portals. Realm Walkers are those big boys from Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. You'd kill one and it would open a portal, and you'd go through into another realm. And the season write-up goes on to say exactly that. Delve into hell portals for powerful buffs. I imagine these will be the Realm Walker portals we'll be walking into, but what powerful buffs will we get? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but we'll probably find out soon enough. I'm expecting after PTR ends, they're probably within a couple days going to announce when the next campfire chat's going to be, which if I had to guess is going to be in 2 to 3 weeks from now. Probably 2, given we're really coming up on Vessel of Hatred launch. Now, as for the PTR itself, I got a video going over my initial impressions. Do check that out. It covers my 1 to 60 experience. In short, overall, 2.0 is looking good. I'm sad that they got rid of the classic campfire scene at character select, but it is what it is. Then to go over some other quick highlights that might not have been mentioned in the campfire chat or that you might have missed, they added a bunch of new hairstyles, mostly long hairstyles, plus some new dye options. Yes, that's in addition to the extra dyes that we got as a surprise 2 weeks ago. Still no black dye, no. You can now access the wardrobe from your inventory screen. The Paragon board UI looks better now. You can see the extent of the new area, Nahantu. It's the biggest of the regions yet, bigger than Hawazar or Dry Steppes or any of those. The party finder's looking solid. Being able to set a favorite waypoint is a godsend. We have new inventory tabs, a dedicated socket tab, so for socketable items like runes and gems, a dedicated tab for dungeon keys, the new HUD compass that points in the right direction, if you choose to use it, helps keep your eye on your character rather than in the top right corner of your screen. Hell tides are not all red anymore, with so many things and effects in this game being red. This has improved readability. And speaking of readability, the stat squish numbers are much, much smaller just across the board. Now, at first I was neutral on this. I didn't really have an opinion on the numbers. It didn't really bother me whether they were big or small. But the more that I think about it, the more I do care about the numbers now that they're smaller. Like, I feel like the numbers are more meaningful. I care about the numbers more. I feel their weight. I feel the weight of an increase in the numbers more than when the numbers were kind of bloated. And of course, it's just easier now to read those big damage numbers on screen. Then a small change that I first experienced on PTR, but it was actually came to the base game. We had patch 1.5.2 released to the base game recently. Your mount now appears in the loading screen with you. Neat little thing to make you care about your mount cosmetic more. Gotta show off that drip. But now let's talk a bit more about the post-60 experience. Getting into stuff I didn't talk as much about in my other video there. So, once I hit level 60, I applied my 200 Paragon points and was able to instantly complete a pit tier 20 and unlock Torment 1. Now, normally, once you hit 60, you don't instantly have all those Paragon, so keep that in mind. But then, without much more effort, I unlocked Torment 2. I think that's pit tier 35. Though I do think I had to fix my resistances and armor on my gear before I got into Torment 2, or at least I took the time to do that. And it's once I was in Torment 2 that I started to hit the wall. I did unlock Torment 3, but it was tougher, and I could not keep progressing into Torment 3. I couldn't even be efficient in Torment 3, so I went back to Torment 2 in order to farm efficiently to be able to better tackle Torment 3. Now, mind you, by this point, I had 0 Paragon glyphs. So I decided, okay, let me go do my Paragon glyphs. I did some Nightmare dungeons to get them to drop. Then I did pits to level them up. I also hadn't done any masterworking at that point, so I started to do a little bit of masterworking. I didn't want to invest too heavily into it at first because my gear was not great. Despite farming on Torment 2, items were not raining from the sky. I was basically at a point in my gearing where Ancestrals were the only source of upgrades though, so I'd kind of maxed out on base non-ancestral gear, and Ancestrals, kind of rare now, because the only Ancestrals that drop are ones with greater affixes. So at this point in my gearing, I had a singular Ancestral item, a dagger, and it had 1 greater affix, and I'd found a few others, but they were all, I'm going to say trash. They were not usable by my build. And I do like that Ancestrals are now rare. All Ancestrals always drop with at least 1 greater affix again, and to describe their rarity, imagine the current drop rates on live server, but now imagine that non-greater affix Ancestrals just don't drop. So Filter those out of your mind, you're only seeing the greater affix drops, which in fairness, that's all you really care about very, very quickly in the live server. So it's basically the same drop rates of Ancestral with greater affix, or at least that's what it feels like. And yes, bricking still feels bad. Then the new tier of gems, man, are they expensive. I think that's fine though. It's just going to take a really long time to be able to afford those, which I think it's good. I think it's good to have that long tail progression. They're going to help tremendously for Torment 4. Currently on live servers, you no longer have to solve the mini game of resists and armor, getting those maxed out. You can solve it very easily, and then you have literally nothing to do with the sockets in your jewelry, because jewelry sockets literally just do armor and resists. This, I don't believe, is going to be an issue in Season 6 because Torment 4 imposes a negative 100 penalty to your resists and negative 1,000 penalty to your armor. Every Torment increases the penalty, and again, it maxes out at 100 and 1,000 on Torment 4. So I think you're going to really need those Giga Gems. So you're going to want to farm those up, and again, it taking a long time, you're going to be farming it in Torment 3 probably. I think that's totally fine. You can also try to just be a baller and go into Torment 4 without your resistances and armor capped. You know, just don't get hit. Easy. I still enjoy the resist and armor puzzle. I was actually doing that. I had to keep solving it from going to, again, Torment 1, Torment 2, Torment 3. I was finagling my gear. It was actually the most I was really changing my gear. Those are affixes that I cared the most about. Also, eventually, Paragon points are going to be helping with solving the resist problem. Right now, I know that, you know, over my next 20 to 30 Paragon levels, I'll be able to grab a little bit more resists here and there. Plus, with more masterworking, right? My masterworks are like at rank 4. Getting those up to 12, that's going to crank up the armor values, the resist values on my gear. So I can see a path forward to being able to better survive in these higher difficulties. I think that's always something essential, is when you see a mountain, but you have an idea of how to climb it, as opposed to, well, there's a mountain and I feel there's nothing I can do about it. Now, blue and yellow items seem to still keep dropping even in Torment 4, from my observations of other people. I'll reiterate my stance on these. Any item that drops in a given difficulty ought to have the possibility to be useful for a character in that difficulty. Blues and yellows are obsolete once you're in Torment, and serving as salvage material is not a purpose. Just give me the salvage material instead of giving me a chore of here's something that you're gonna have to, that's gonna clutter your inventory, clutter the screen, and you gotta go break it down to the blacksmith. Also, serving as bad loot to make the good loot feel better, also not something that needs to be done. We already have bad loot, i.e. legendaries that have rolled poorly, or at this point, you know, non-ancestrals. So I hope that the devs either find a purpose for blue and yellow items, or just get them to stop dropping. Also, I'm not convinced world bosses feel rewarding enough for the time invested. This had become a problem in Season 5. Doesn't seem like it's solved in Season 6. Now, Paragon levels. They seem to come fast enough, even when you have 200 of them, which I was surprised. I thought it would take longer once you have 200 Paragon to keep leveling. To clarify, 200 Paragon is the equivalent of being a level 100 character on live server. Now, I'm given to understand that it's going to ramp up significantly the closer you get to 300. Estimates are that to go from Paragon 230 to 300 is going to take like 70 hours. And I think that's great. I want, one, a fixed Paragon cap, no, infinite Paragon. And I want it to be an aspirational goal that is really challenging to achieve, like level 99 was in Diablo 2. In D2, we were all happy to get to level 90. We knew that getting those last 9 levels represented only a tiny increase in our power, and few people actually got there. Because you knew how long it would take to get to 99, and it's just a little bit more power, we just felt okay being like level 92, 93. So similarly in D4, I'm cool with Paragon 300 fulfilling that purpose. Because, especially now, we're capped at 5 Paragon boards, and we can basically get everything that we want on those 5 boards in about 225 Paragon points, so those last 75 Paragon points, it's really just a brag. We ought not feel compelled to have to hit 300, versus on the live game, well, one, the game is telling us to reach level 100, right? There's objectives in the game saying, reach level 100, And the power increase from level 90 to 100 is significant because it could represent another Paragon board, another legendary glyph, which is a huge spike in power. With 200 Paragon levels right now, you have all your legendary glyphs well figured out. Honestly, on live servers, once I hit level 100 in D4, I lose a big part of my motivation to keep playing, on that same character at least. And I'll work on my gear a bit, but then I start working on alts. But if I were to know that, hey, while I'm farming for these mythic drops, while I'm doing, you know, an afternoon of Duriel runs, I'm getting a little bit of XP that's grinding out a couple more Paragon levels, I'm probably going to feel a little bit more motivated to keep playing. Also, Paragon is shared now, so it should take longer to finish leveling your Paragon because you don't have to redo it all over again on other characters. Now, while I didn't get to experience leveling from Paragon 1 to Paragon 200 because we just got our carryover Paragon on our Eternal characters, I imagine it's going to be pretty fast, and if I had to guess in total, the time needed to go from level 1 to level 60 with then 200 Paragon levels, I think that's going to be equivalent to reaching level 100 on live D4, if not even faster. And again, I like the Paragon board cap. I find myself now actually caring about the blue nodes, the yellow nodes, the connections, rather than just playing, well, how could I collect as many glyphs as possible? One thing that I'm not sure I love, however, is the way that difficulty settings are gated. So, we have 4 difficulty settings pre-endgame. Normal, hard, expert, penitent. Penitent only unlocks once you reach character level 50. Then you have the 4 endgame difficulties that only become available once you hit level 60. Torment 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Torment 1 only unlocks once you complete a Pit 20, which again you have to be level 60 to even do the Pit. Now, it's not so bad because at least once you reach level 60, you automatically can jump straight to a Pit 20. But then, once you do that Pit 20, and you unlock Torment 1. Then to unlock Torment 2, you gotta do a Pit level 35. But you don't unlock a Pit level 35. You've done your 20, you've unlocked maybe a 23. And then you do the 23, and then you get a 25 or a 26. And you gotta like creep your way up rather than just be able to simply attempt the 35. Why not let us just attempt a 35? Why do we gotta slowly grind it out? Some people like to face a big jump in challenge. They want to try something skull-crushingly difficult just to see if they can tackle it. The capstones actually served as a nice challenge in this regard. People could feel a good sense of satisfaction in tackling the capstone way earlier than you think you should be able to. Now, capstones are gone with patch 2.0, so we don't get to opt into that big challenge. We're forced to have this like slower progress, this more gradual incrementation of the challenge, which, you know, by itself, right, the average player probably wants that experience, which is great, but why not again let us opt into taking on a big challenge? Imagine being a level 50 character and you want to jump straight into Torment 1. Given the way scaling works now, that would actually be a big accomplishment. You're not even level 60, you're level 50, and you go straight to Pit 20? That would be an accomplishment. Now, just to clarify here, I understand gating the actual difficulty levels behind a challenge. You don't want to just have, okay, you know, you're a level 1 character, you can go straight to Torment 4. That just leads to people leeching in these difficulties. But you gate the access to the difficulty behind a challenge that we're free to tackle whenever we want. If I'm a level 1 character and I want to test my might trying to unlock Torment 4, let me do it. Let me fail miserably. But that's how I'm feeling about these things, folks. How are you feeling? Sound off in the comments. Now, outside of Diablo 4, someone at Blizzard seems to have let slip that they're working on a new, unannounced AAA RPG FPS game. And some are speculating that it may be Diablo related. On LinkedIn, a Blizzard employee, we're not going to call him out here specifically by name, but he posted his job status as Senior Director of Product Management on an unannounced AAA RPG FPS title on PC and console. And ever since people took notice, he then modified that to just say unannounced AAA title on PC and console. And he's held this position since April 2024, when he also took on the position of Senior Director of Product Management on Overwatch 2. Now, this may lead you to believe that this new game is under the umbrella of Overwatch. He's Product Director on Overwatch 2, would make sense, he'd be Product Director on everything Overwatch. It's a possibility. After all, we were promised a full PvE mode in Overwatch 2 for years, so maybe this is that. However, Blizzard just earlier this year fully canned Overwatch PvE after years of dragging it out, and they basically dismantled the team working on it. So why do that and then just months later start up to basically rebuild another team to do mostly the same thing? So I don't think this is an Overwatch thing. Now, prior to taking on this new role, this employee was actually the director of product management on Blizzard's survival game. He was in that role for 2 years before the game was cancelled early this year, and again, that team was dismantled. We know that this new game is a AAA title, meaning full budget, not a small project, even though Microsoft has been encouraging Blizzard to work on more smaller scale projects. So it could be that Blizzard is developing a new IP for this title, but to go full AAA budget on a new IP that isn't a guarantee to hit in a genre that they haven't done before, after just shutting down a project on a new IP, I don't know. If I had to guess, I think Blizzard is banking on brand recognition for this one. So if we're ruling out Overwatch, we're ruling out a new IP. Again, we're making educated guesses here. That basically leaves Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft. If we look at Blizzard's job postings for unannounced projects, we can glean a couple more small details. Now, we don't know whether all of these job postings are for the same unannounced project, but there's one job posting for a creative director posted in April, which requires a deep understanding of IP world building and narrative design. So maybe it is for a new IP, or maybe it is to world build in an IP that just hasn't been as fleshed out as some of Blizzard's other IPs. Which would rule out Warcraft. That's Blizzard's most fleshed out world by far. But StarCraft, for example, we've really only seen small glimpses of StarCraft's entire universe. There's a lot of room to build upon. They could introduce any planet anywhere and have that be an entirely new setting. Then there was another job posting for Principal Software Engineer, posted in July, asking for experience working on 3D action multiplayer games. So this would rule out a single player experience, and you know, Diablo can be described as a 3D action multiplayer game. So if this job posting is for the same project, it seems like it's not exclusively a shooter, but rather an action game with shooting elements. Maybe you can choose to play a melee build, for instance. Also in late April, a job posting for Combat AI Design Director suggests that it will be a PvE game, not a PvP game. And lastly, a posting for an Open World Design Director in July explicitly states open world gameplay, with gameplay spaces ranging from sprawling exterior zones to tight and intense claustrophobic interiors. It mentions making gameplay and content for a large game world that enables great gameplay and exciting exploration, as well as creating large combat AI play spaces. And Blizzard wants the candidate to have demonstrated mastery of designing for level flow, AI density, pacing, repeatable content, and storytelling. So all this together, and again, we're assuming it's all the same game, paints us a picture of a multiplayer game in which you go around with your buddies, killing AI enemies in both an open world and in dungeons. You farm the same content multiple times. There's shooting, but possibly other forms of combat as well. It's in a first-person perspective. This could, in theory, be a Diablo project. Imagine a game called Demon Hunter, and you, the player, take on the role of Diablo 3 Demon Hunters. You know, you're using those twin repeating crossbows like pistols, that kind of brings in the gunplay, you know, get some throwing knives. The Demon Hunter had like grenades and all that stuff, grappling hooks to traverse terrain. It could all take place in the Dreadlands. That's a region in Diablo that is home to the Demon Hunters, and we haven't really explored that area much, so there's room for world building there. We know that at some point Blizzard was developing a third-person, over-the-shoulder style, kind of Dark Souls-like Diablo game, so they're definitely open to doing other things in this world apart from just an ARPG. Now, all that said, I don't think it's likely that it is a Diablo project, but it is possible. Now, we know that Blizzard had a StarCraft FPS project in the works, which was indefinitely shelved in, I believe, 2019, in order to move talent over to Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 to get those games released. And I think StarCraft really is the biggest opportunity here. Because also, look at the timeline. If this really kicked off in April, what was happening around April 2024? Well, February 8th, a little game called Helldivers 2 launched and rocketed up to insane popularity over the course of a month or two. I'm sure there were people at Blizzard looking at that success, looking at the meteoric rise, and saying, hey, why can't we make a game like that? And if they were to make a game like that, StarCraft is a perfect fit. You can play as Terrans, you're fighting swarms of Zerg, and then the Protoss come in, this whole multi-faction battle. It all translates very well. You could imagine Helldivers 2 in a StarCraft setting. Now, the difference is Helldivers is an instance-based kind of game, whereas the game that we're seeing these job postings for seems to lean more into RPG and open-world experiences, but still, if I had to bet, I think this is a StarCraft project. StarCraft still has a ton of brand recognition, and while the RTS genre isn't exactly super popular today, it's easier to sell people on a StarCraft game than on an entirely new IP. But that's my theorizing. What's yours, folks? Sound off in the comments with your wild ideas. Now, speaking of Helldivers 2, it seems the game actually hasn't been doing too well lately. Recent reviews are mostly negative on Steam. Only 37% within the last 30 days are positive. And looking into things, this doesn't seem to be due to some kind of review bomb protest. Players just seem to generally be unhappy with the devs continuing to seemingly nerf the fun out of the game. Apparently everyone's favorite guns keep getting nerfed patch after patch, bugs are not being fixed, and player numbers have been dropping catastrophically compared to how popular the game was around release. And while it is normal for a game to lose players after launch, this is a live service game. It's getting content updates. It should reach a stable population that ebbs and flows with these updates and, ideally build over time. But its biggest update yet seems to have done little to stabilize the shrinking player base. Just 3 weeks after the release of, again, the biggest content update yet, player counts are now lower than they were before the content released. Now the devs are promising buffs to players, nerfs to enemies in an upcoming patch on September 17th. I hope this will be a step towards resolving players' discontent. I can understand the devs having a vision of how the game ought to be played, and I can respect sticking to that vision. But once you see numbers consistently dropping and the same player complaints being repeated about your vision, you gotta course correct if you want to save the game. I loved Helldivers 2. But I stopped playing it months ago at this point, and I just can't motivate myself to jump back in. I keep saying I'm going to wait for the third enemy faction to be introduced, the Illuminate, which they've been teased for a while now. But at this point, I'm just worried about what the state of the game is going to be by the time the Illuminate even come out. Now, speaking of them, we did get a new Illuminate teaser, maybe. Some players logged in to see this purple sector appear on the galaxy map, which clearly the Illuminate, but it was explained away in-game as a bug in the system. Now, whether this was a real bug in the Helldivers game or whether it was a deliberate teaser by the devs, we don't know. Helldivers 2 was a sudden smash hit. It came out of nowhere. It was a cultural phenomenon for a while, and I'm just really bummed to see it fading away into obscurity. If the devs had made different decisions, I think it could have sustained healthy player counts to this day. Definitely not the same numbers at launch, but a good core healthy player base. Now, I turn the question to you folks. If you stop playing Helldivers 2, why? And what would it take to bring you back? Sound off in the comments. Now, speaking of games fading away, I expected Concord to fade away. We spoke about this game last week. Instead, Concord went out with an absolute bang. 10 days after this Sony game launched, this Sony first-party game launched, they announced they would be turning off the servers on September 6th. They immediately stopped selling the game, and they offered all customers full refunds. Again, we spoke about Concord last week. I said I expected servers to be offline within 6 months. I apparently was being optimistic. This is officially one of the biggest AAA catastrophes of all time, if not the biggest. Estimates are that the game only sold 25,000 copies. After being in development for 8 years, estimates are that this game only sold 25,000 copies, and it could never even reach 4-digit player counts on Steam. And some people estimate that for a team-based PvP game, you gotta maintain 5-digit player counts for proper matchmaking with good experiences for all players. Now, credit to Sony for issuing those refunds, and I do hope the best for the devs. As I said last time, I smell executive meddling in here. I just can't believe that 8 years of development leads up to this without some people high up ignoring good advice and forcing bad decisions. Then another quick news, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 released this week, and it's getting good reviews. On OpenCritic, it has a top critic average score of 83 out of 100, with 91% of critics recommending the game. Seems the game is solid, but the campaign is on the shorter end, so it's a good game, needs more content, but thankfully the devs have a roadmap promising more content to come. And that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discussed how it sure looks like Diablo 4 is becoming Diablo 3. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more gaming content.